All right, let's dive into something that's absolutely crucial for anyone trying to make a difference in the world. We're talking about how you move beyond just having good intentions to actually proving you're making a real, measurable impact. It's the difference between being busy and truly being effective.
So let's just get right to it. Imagine you've got the passion, you've got a great idea, you're putting in all the hard work, but then someone, maybe a donor, a board member, or hey, maybe even you, ask yourself, is this actually working? What do you say? How do you prove with real evidence that your efforts are truly changing things for the better?
And this brings us to a really common problem in the world of doing good. It's so easy to get caught up in the action, right? The day-to-day grind. But the real goal isn't just to be active, it's to be effective. And proving that, well, that's a whole other ball game.
I mean, you look around and there are so many amazing people and organizations trying to tackle huge issues, and that's fantastic. But passion on its own doesn't guarantee results. If we don't have a clear roadmap connecting what we do to the change we want to see, it's really easy to get lost. So how do we build that roadmap? Well, the answer is a really powerful tool called a theory of change. The best way to think about it is like a blueprint for your project, the thing that connects all your daily tasks to that big, ultimate vision.
So a theory of change, or TOC for short, is basically your project's logic, but made visual. It's a super simple story that says, look, if we do this one thing, then this other thing will happen, and that will eventually lead to the big change we're aiming for. It forces you to connect all the dots in a clear, logical chain.
Okay, so this chain of change has 5 main links. It kicks off with inputs. That's all your resources. Then you've got your activities, what you actually do. That leads to your outputs, the immediate results. Then come the outcomes, the short-term changes. And finally, the big one, impact, the long-term difference you make. Let's make this real with an example.
So let's imagine our big goal is to tackle high youth unemployment in a community. The very first link in our chain is inputs. These are just the basic resources you need to even get started. In our case, that's going to be our expert trainers, the funding we secured, and all our training materials.
Okay, we've got our inputs ready to go, so what do we do with them? Well, that's the next link, activities. For our program, the main activity is simple. We run a bunch of vocational training sessions. This is the core work of the project. Next up, outputs. Now this part is super important, and it's where people can get a little mixed up. Outputs are the direct, countable results of your activities. It's not the change itself, it's just proof you did something. So if our activity was training, our output is that, say, 200 young people have now completed that training. Simple as that. And this is where we start to see the real magic happen. Outcomes are the actual changes in knowledge, skills, or even behavior that happen because of your outputs. So those 200 youth don't just walk away with a certificate, they now have real, tangible, employable skills. That's the outcome.
And finally, we get to the whole reason we started this thing, impact. This is the ultimate, big-picture, long-term change we were hoping for. Because those young people gain new skills, that was the outcome. They start getting jobs, which leads to a measurable drop in the local unemployment rate. And just like that, you can see the entire story, from a little bit of funding all the way to a major community-wide change.
Okay, so the theory of change gives us the roadmap. Fantastic. But a map's not much good if you don't know where you are on it, right? How do we track our progress along the way? Well, for that, we need a kind of GPS. And in this world, we call those indicators. Indicators are really just the specific, measurable signs that tell you if you're on the right track. Think of them like the vital signs of your project. They're constantly answering that one critical question: are we actually making progress?
And you'll notice how these indicators line up perfectly with our theory of change. You don't just measure the end goal. You need output indicators, like the number of workshops you ran, to know if you're doing the work. And you need outcome indicators, like the percentage of students who improved their grades, to see if that work is causing short-term change. Each one is a critical checkpoint on your journey.
Of course, not all data is good data. You can't just measure random things and hope for the best. So that leads to a pretty important question, right? How do we make sure our indicators are actually useful and telling us what we really need to know?
Well, the gold standard here is the SMART framework. Your indicator has to be specific. You can't just say improve skills. You need to say improve coding skills. It has to be measurable. How will you track that? A test score, maybe? It also has to be achievable, relevant to your goal, and finally, time-bound, so you have a deadline. This whole framework stops you from chasing vague, useless data.
Let's run through one more super quick example just to lock this in. Imagine an environmental group wants to improve the local ecosystem. Their big activity? Planting a whole bunch of trees.
So what's the immediate measurable result? The output. It's simply the number of trees they actually put into the ground. It's simple, it's countable, a perfect output indicator. But remember, planting the trees is just the output. An outcome might be seeing more wildlife return to the area after a year. And the long-term impact they're really shooting for is improved air quality for the entire community. Now that's harder to measure for sure, but that's the ultimate test of their success. So now we have our two essential pieces of the puzzle: the theory of change, which is our map, and our smart indicators, which act as our GPS. Let's take a second to look at why putting these two things together is such a game changer.
So why go through all this effort? Well, because this whole process gives your project crystal clear direction. It helps you make smarter decisions, it lets you actually measure what success looks like, and it makes you way more accountable and transparent to your funders and the community you're serving. It's what separates a project that's just busy from one that's truly effective.
It really all comes down to this one powerful idea. Your theory of change is your strategy, it's your why, and your indicators are the proof. Put them together, and you have what it takes to turn good intentions into real, accountable, and effective change.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. You now have the blueprint and the tools to measure what really matters. Whether you're working on a small community garden or a massive global venture, the question isn't if you can measure your impact anymore. So what change do you want to map out?